stash. I'm recording this a few days after Halloween, and just bring everyone up to speed. There was a Halloween-themed match, and there's only so many things you can go as and still shoot well. One of them is Magnum PI, so I impersonated Magnum PI this year. I'm just going to let your imagination run wild with that for a second. Anyway, what we're here to talk about is what is a custom pistol. I kind of come at this topic from various different angles. When I hear people talking about it that don't know what they're talking about, it really kind of hurts my feelings in a very personal way. And so I just like to float this out here for people who, again, a big part of the reason I do this channel at all is to a past me that was looking for this information and couldn't find it. So if you're out there trying to figure this stuff out, you know, on this side of the purchasing decision, I've spent the money. All right, so I'm helping you figuratively, hopefully, one or two of you out there, as you decide how to spend your limited funds on pistols. If you're not going to invest in as many as I ended up buying. But hear this a lot, right? We'll look at people, other YouTube channels, they'll look at a pistol like this. And this is an Atlas Erebus. And they will say, that is a really great production pistol, but it's not custom. It's not custom. There's custom guns out there, and that's not it. And they say it as almost like custom is better somehow than this. And so you ask them, well, what is custom? And they'll rattle off whoever it is that they're talking about, and somehow that's better. They're like, well, that's different because that's custom. This is a model. This is a model that you select. You have a few drop down choices: trigger length, what type of safeties you want, what kind of optic plate it comes with, what kind of magwell it comes with. It's fairly established though, as far as what you can get in an Atlas Erebus as to what it can actually be. And it's not as custom as people would like. Now, what is custom, especially in the world of high-end pistols, specifically 1911, 2011 style pistols? I'm sure we're coming up on the day where there will be other platforms. But I think what people for a long time have placed the word custom on premium pistols. So a premium 1911 is a custom 1911. And they somehow think that once a pistol gets standardized in its feature set, it's not custom anymore. But custom has always been best. Custom has always been the highest tier pistol you could get. And so once a pistol is condensed in its option set, somehow it's not as premium as a custom gun. Let's unpack that a little bit. Just being a student of these as much as I am a shooter, you know, broader sources. My friend, I would call him my friend even though we've never met in person, but my friend Eli over at Alchemy Custom Weaponry 1776 Duck, he puts out a lot of great information, which I consume at a rabid pace. He puts out very interesting information. But him and other sources have kind of shed light on this era of custom 1911 pistols and what they are, what they aren't, and kind of how all that came to be. Before Eli, not a whole lot of people were talking very much about it because that generation just doesn't do that kind of thing now in any way. So let's go back to what was a custom pistol. If you back up 30, 40, 50 years, really all there was in the world of 1911s, and by virtue of that, automatics in general, were military surplus, all right? The only 1911 you could get was a Colt or a USGI surplus pistol, all right? And then other companies came along, Springfield, Kimber, things like that. That would be much later, but for a long time, all you could get was Colts. Colts and USGI, all the government contractors that made those. And when they took those were fairly readily available. The Colts of then were like the Glocks of today, kind of. And a lot of what was out there was Milsurp. So Colt was making varying quality of pistols. Magazines that were out there, like magazines that are out there were floating around. They were mil surplus. So if the military didn't want to keep them, they were probably of varying quality, right? Or expired, used. So, if you're getting like, there's talk of gun shows where you would get, 5 magazines for $5 or whatever it was. They were getting cheap USGI mags. People didn't know as much. The guns weren't, and the magazines weren't made to the level that there was today, because the customer didn't have the expectations that they have today. By and large, people of that era were much more mechanical, and could troubleshoot stuff on their own. They had a little bit of common sense about how stuff worked. The manuals for cars back then told you how to adjust the timing of the valves. The manuals for cars now tell you not to consume the liquid in the batteries. All right, so that's the generational gap of people that we're talking about. Back to pistols. So if you wanted a pistol better than what you could get from Colt, you essentially had to send it to a gunsmith, but an artisan, really, who was going to, in essence, take a functioning gun and remanufacture it, all right? And so when we talk about gunsmiths like Swenson, Novak, Heine, guys like this, or, the contemporary ones like Larry Vickers, my first exposure to this was Larry Vickers. This is the July 2001 edition of Handgunner magazine. The article that's in here is actually in the Vickers Guidebook, but they talk about this guy, this gunsmith, who masterfully recrafts a pistol into the ultimate custom builder, custom gun that you could get. He took a base Springfield, mil spec, and built it into this. You couldn't buy this at the time. You had to buy a base gun, send it to somebody, and they would make you this. All right. So essentially, before the era of CNC machines that we have now, they essentially had to either peen the rails, so they were disfiguring them with a hammer and then recutting them, or welding them up, so welding on extra material, remachining them. They essentially were fixing a broken gun, if you have to think of it in a sense. And that's where a lot of these pistol smiths made their name. All right, that is where Wilson Combat came from. All right, he was working in his dad's watch or jewelry store fixing watches. He liked guns more than he liked watches. He started applying some of those same skills to fixing guns, and that was the beginning of his business. All right, so that's where Wilson Combat, or Wilsons at the time, that's where you even heard their name, or their name started from, was they were essentially fixing these guns. And a lot of the early ones, especially if you go over to Eli's channel, some of the guns he'll show you, those are Wilson remanufactured guns. All right, and they were custom, because like, you're sending it to them, you're telling them what they want them to do, and they're doing it, and then they send it back to you. And so the closest thing I have to a custom gun is probably this one. All right, and you're like, wait a minute, that's an Erebus. No, this is what became the Erebus. All right, I call this the Maximus, and for a while it was a funny joke for my friends to call in and ask for the Maximus, because this wasn't a gun that you could buy yet. And so I would ask them to call in and ask for the Maximus, until the salesperson at that time politely asked me not to do that anymore. So the joke has run its course, and that person doesn't actually work there anymore anyway. But so this is the closest thing I have to a custom gun. I had an idea. I was like, well, I want a slide ride red dot gun that I'm gonna shoot 3-gun with, but not an open gun. I want a 9mm minor gun cut for a red dot, because I work for an optics company, obviously. And so I gave Adam that idea. this is the gun that he built. All right, we'll come back to that in a second. So you would send a gun out, it would get built, and they would send you a gun back. What made the companies that we still recognize today as premium 1911 manufacturers, Wilson, Nighthawk, offshoot of Wilson, or a bunch of people from Wilson that left, Ed Brown, Les Bear, who are some other ones, Cabot, by affiliation, Alchemy, a lot of those companies, the reason they are today what they are is because the era of the custom pistol smith kind of died. Guys like Larry Vickers, as good as they were, as renowned as they were for building pistols, they don't do it anymore. Now, in current times, we know why, but Larry Vickers hasn't built pistols in decades. Hilton Yam would be another one. Hilton was their 10-8 Performance. That was another very well-known pistol smith. He's still making content today. You go check out his channel, 10-8 Performance. He's not currently taking on work to build guns, as far as I know, maybe for his friends, but that's about it. Because there's no money in it, all right? This is America, all right? It is very labor intensive to build these guns, remanufacture these guns, and get them back out. So there's what that person's time is worth, what they would charge to do that, what a customer is willing to pay for it, and as soon as those don't necessarily match up anymore, you don't have much of a business. There aren't very many guys still doing that line of work. Most prevalent one you could probably find would be Heirloom Precision. Try to buy one of his guns. Go ahead, we'll wait. You didn't find any, did you? No, you got, I mean, I think on an interview he said he's 2 years out or something like that. All right, so like the real pistol smiths, real custom pistol smiths, there's not enough of them to go around, and if you have to ask how much it costs, you can't afford it. Like, we're talking guns that probably cost near $10,000, I would imagine. But that era of custom pistol smiths sort of died off with Wilson figuring out, hey, I really want to offer these guns, but they take a long time to build. How do I make this as a business? He started consolidating down into models. All right, so this is the August 1998 issue of Guns and Ammo magazine. This is probably one of the first issues that really captured my intrigue with 1911s. There is one of their models and one of their flagship models to this day, the CQB, the Close Quarters Battle. All right, I'm not even a teenager at this point. At some point, I need to get this gun. All right, well, I growed up. I do actually have that gun now. All right, and this is an earlier production CQB. But this is essentially Wilson evolving from a custom pistol smith, taking the gun that you send them and fixing it up. They started manufacturing from virgin parts, from fresh parts, the gun that they wanted to make. All right. And so in this era, I forget what the date is on this one, actually. I think this one's like 2008 or so. But early on, he was sourcing new parts. I think for a while they were Kimber, I heard. To give you an example, there aren't very many OEMs that make slides, that make frames. So a lot of them come from the same place. But he got new parts that were, and in some cases, oversized parts that he could machine to fit together. So instead of having to fix something that had already been fit incorrectly, he could fit it right the first time. So we hear Larry Vickers and those guys talk about it's built right, not tight. Well, it's because they knew the dimensions that they had to hit to get this to perform the way they wanted, and they made it right the first time, instead of being like that era gone by of people building on Colts and Springfields to remanufacture a gun. And then, being a shrewd businessman that he is, he saw the future of this in being control of his own parts. So when you're a custom pistol builder, a high-end pistol builder, you are essentially at the mercy of your suppliers. The guy who makes your slides, the guy who makes your barrels, the guy who makes your frames, your thumb safeties. That was a thing for a long time in Atlas Gunworks too. All right, so they were, in that era, they were getting frames from STI, just like everybody. They were getting grips from a few different vendors, all right? And essentially, their production was throttled by the parts manufacturers and their ability to fill orders. If Atlas is getting orders faster than, say, PT can fill their grip orders, well, then Atlas's lead time gets longer. And when you have an order with a gun manufacturer, you don't really care why your gun's not coming. You just know that you ordered a gun and it's not here yet. So the manufacturer is the one that bears all the brunt of the customer and the ding on their reputation for how long they take. And that is, some of what makes their, oh man, they're good guns, but you can't get them. You can't turn them out the door. He's too busy answering the phone and all that stuff. That's not Atlas specific. That's pretty much any custom gunsmith you work with. So Wilson saw the future of their business as being vertically integrated to the point where they controlled all their own parts. So not only were they building virgin guns, they were building virgin guns on their parts. All right. So I would say now, and they would probably even tell you if you got to the right person, they build the guns to sell you the parts. All right. They make by far more money selling hammers, beaver tails, grips, triggers than they do on selling you a CQB. But without the CQB, as being a prominent, pistol that it is, who cares what your parts are if you don't have a reputation of solid pistols? All right, so the reputation of this pistol is what gets you to want to put a Wilson beaver tail on your T-Saws. While that's an absurd idea, and I would not recommend you do that, people out there who have grown up in the era of Glocks and AR-15s think that they can buy enough Wilson parts to make a T-Sauce a Wilson and save some money. Well, I mean, it keeps companies like Wilson in business. All right. But the era of the semi-custom pistol was born, and that was coming out of that custom era where they're like, all right, we know how to make premium pistols, but we can't just make one-offs, continually make one-offs. We need to standardize here. And so we're making CQBs, and CQBs consist of most of the common popular features that we sell. And then as a semi-custom manufacturer, we'll give you some options. Do you want an ambi safety? Yes, no. We can put it on there, no problem. Do you want a magwell? Yes, no. No problem. What color do you want it? Oh, I want the frame purple and I want the slide gray. Sweet. No problem. But as far as the barrels they need to source, the slides they need to source, the frames they need to source, the serrations that they cut in them, the sights that they need to have to put in them, that's all standardized. That can all float down the line, and they can make subtle changes, similar to cars. You can't get a custom F-150, really. F-150s have a lot of options. You can package them differently, but the frames, the transmissions, the engines, those are the same, all right? And there are different trim packages. That's what semi-custom pistols are like. Now, by and large, most people order the same thing, all right? So there's nothing more American, I think, than wanting to have a custom anything, right? And so while I was working retail at a gun store, we sold a lot of these. A lot of our customers, a lot of the people who buy high-end guns like this, they like the idea of premium. They don't necessarily care what it does. To them, it's like a high-end watch, right? And like they appreciate it for the fine thing that it is. It doesn't just tell them the time. And they also somewhat like the process of being pandered to, like happens at that level, all right? So they like the idea of ordering a custom gun, and you can still do that today using Wilson Combat as an example, all right? Because Wilson has this lineage, all right? So you could do that. You could go down the list. All right. Oh, I understand that you have five Ed Browns on the shelf. You have 5 Les Bears on the shelf. I want to order a custom one. Sweet, no problem. Pull up the list. All right. What length do you want? 5-inch. Okay. Do you want a light rail? No. Okay. What trigger do you want? Medium curved. Oh, okay. Do you want fixed or adjustable rear sight? Fixed. Okay. Do you want a flat, a black front sight or a gold bead front sight? Oh, gold bead. Okay. What grips? And you go down. Essentially, many times I walk people through, and they would get that one. We would order that one, but also, for the most part, everybody orders the same gun, even though you like the idea of it's custom for you. Everybody orders the same gun. Like, it's a 1911, all right? Like, what sights do you want on it? What safety do you want on it? What trigger do you want on it? They are the same, really, when it talks about options. So back to when people were like, well, that's not custom. Why isn't it custom? Well, because Infinity gives me all the options. Okay. And it can be whatever I want. Okay, well, what do you want? And then they run down the list again. And guess what? They ordered the same gun that everybody else makes. And so that's where companies would standardize into models. It does a few things. It allows them to be more profitable on the pistol, which keeps them in business, all right? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It wasn't profitable. The custom gun business wasn't profitable enough for Larry Vickers to keep building pistols, all right? There's less than 100, and that's it. He went and did other things in the industry, using him as the example. Hilton Yam, same way, all right? So it allows them to be more profitable as a business, which allows them to grow their product line and allows them to get control of their own parts. I said this is an early version of the CQB, all right? I have a more current version of the CQB, all right? This pistol differs from this pistol aside from the obvious, this is the newer generation pistols are made all out of their bulletproof parts, okay? That's the word that they give to their parts that are machined out of bar stock, all right? So they take a bar of material and they make a thumb safety out of it. They make a bar of material and they make a hammer out of it. Stronger and better parts integrity than, say, forging or casting or MIM. Everyone gets super excited about MIM, all right? So the highest quality parts they can make are what go into the complete guns now, all right? And so when people talk about this era of custom guns, while those guns were cool, those guns are not as they aren't going to last as long as these guns were, because this gun was machined right the first time. Those older guns, like this, for example, if you welded up the frame rails, all right, well, that material isn't going to last as long. Super high round counts on those guns will fall apart. And not to mention that because that's kind of functional art now, you're going to significantly decrease the value of that gun if you shoot it a lot. This gun is made to a much higher standard now, or this gun will last a lot longer in terms of mileage, of rounds fired, than this gun. If you hold these two guns side by side, frame fit, and even if you're a 1911 guy, you can even hear it on the camera, all right? So if you listen to that whole thing there, listen to this one. That's pretty nuanced, but holding the two guns side by side, feeling the two guns side by side, the triggers between the two, not even the same thing. Not even the same thing. I would say this gun has more in common with this TRP than it does its brother, its younger brother, all right? Well, what happened? Well, Wilson, as they grew and became successful in the semi-custom gun business, they became in control of more of their own parts. Now, instead of this being a Kimber slide and a Kimber frame that they fit, you know, a KKM barrel into, or whoever it is. I don't know who their vendor was. But instead of taking third-party parts and making them into a CQB, they're now, for the most part, their own parts that they make into a gun. So they're in control of their parts quality from raw material to finished product. They're in control of their margins from raw material to finished part. They can physically build you a better gun for less money than they used to be able to now today. All right. So as they evolved into as a company, people would say, well, it's just a high-end production gun. No, it's not a custom gun. This is the Wilsons that you can get today are far better than what they've ever made. Maybe not as unique, maybe not as what's the word I'm looking for? Boutique. Maybe not as boutique as they used to be, but as far as a gun and doing what guns do, shooting tight groups, functioning, lasting a long time, you know, keeping the tactileness of all their controls longer, that these pistols do a lot better than the older ones do. All right, so that's custom, you know, production and custom. Now production has levels. All right, so when I first got into 1911s, this is the first one I ever bought. I showed you in some other videos. This is my first gun, the gun that I started shooting competition with, and this is a Springfield TRP. This model has been on the books for a long time. All right. And at the time, this was positioned as a high-end production 1911, not semi-custom production. All right, this was an upscale version of what they were calling the loaded at the time, and even in some of their marketing material, they would say that this took a journey through the custom shop. I don't know about that, but this pistol was mass-produced and held to a higher standard than the loaded versions were, than the mil specs, than the GIs were. I have a GI pistol as well. These two both say Springfield, not the same. The more economical versions of the pistols they were making at the time were made on Brazilian frames, Brazilian fit sliding frames. I don't know how much of those were finished in the US. I think these were completely made in the US anyway, but they had an NM stamping on the frames that differentiated these in the time from the American made guns from the Brazilian guns. The loadeds had an N serial number, at least for a while they did. They didn't have the NM, which is kind of reminiscent back to National Match from the Colts. I don't know if Springfield kept that lineage for any particular reason, but the NM Springfields were tangibly different than the N serial number Springfields. So this was a production gun fit to a higher standard than the other production guns, and you could feel it at the time. You could feel it for sure. The triggers were better, the slide frames were better, the barrel fit was better. But they're trying to hit a price point. So how did they do that? Well, some of their parts in here are not made to the same standard as something like that. All right, they're using MIM hammers and small parts in there that they can mass produce in a more economical fashion. Some would argue those parts don't last as long. All right, so they used quote unquote lower quality parts to a looser fit, more of a production standard to hit a price point. The company that I work for, we do the same thing. All right, we have high tier product, we have entry level product, we have everything in the middle. All right, so a lot of times it comes down to a price point. All right, when a Cabela's says we need a 1911 at $6.99, make it for us. Boom, distributor exclusive. All right, that's how that works. They want to have a pistol to fit a variety of price points. As they're allowed a higher price point, they're allowed to do more to the pistol, but there's a limit. All right, so This pistol, for as long as I've been aware of it, has lived between $1,200 and $1,800. All right, so that's what it is. The next echelon below this, a couple $100 less. I think the loaded and range officer models, those have kind of lived in the $700 to $1,000 range. Now prices are snapshots in time, so this video is going to be out longer than who knows what. But when they take a step down, they have to live in that price point. All right, now the Springfields that they're making today are probably better than this one, because over time they have refined their machining process and they are able to source better and better parts and automate more and more things. The more they can automate the process, the cheaper the gun gets. Why? Because, well, what do you expect to get paid for what you do for a living? People who work in gun factories are the same way. All right, so the less people you have in the system, the more economical you can make your guns. Now, guns like this left a gap. There was the production guns that were only so good, and then there was a gap to the high-end guns. All right, that's where a company like Dan Wesson comes in. All right, I would say Dan Wesson has always been kind of the last stop for Crazy Town. All right, so this is the highest grade production gun you can get, in that fitting on them is usually pretty dang good. They're made out of all tool steel parts, and they're just rock solid guns. I have quite a few Dan Wessons, and they do a good job. They last a long time. Cannot get them the way you want them. They are set models. All right, so a Dan Wesson SSC like this one comes the way it comes. A Specialist comes the way it comes. A Valor comes the way it comes. All right, so you don't get to option these pistols out. They're very, very good, but they have a fixed feature set. That's how they can build a pistol at this level for that price. It's because they don't give you options and they roll them out. All right, so back to this gun. All right, so people say, well, this is a really high-end production gun, but it's not custom. Okay, well, I mean, I have a custom gun from when Atlas was doing that, but they were doing essentially the same thing. They started out working on other people's stuff. There's still really old videos of Atlas talking about, Adam talking about doing grip module upgrades to STI DVCs. All right, there's a bunch of DVCs out on the market, but people wanted for more. Well, they had to send them out to pistol smiths to get trigger jobs, to get grips and metal grips installed. They were doing that for a while. Not a whole lot of money in that, but they were doing it for a while they built their base. And then they're doing guns like this. Now, a gun like this is built on OEM parts. All right, that is a STI frame. You know, you can see with the 2011 there. All right, this is a Phoenix grip. This is a pre Evo grip. All right, so STI slide or STI frame, PT grip. This was one of the first. This is when they just started doing their triggers. I have an Atlas gun that has an infinity trigger in it, an infinity trigger shoe in it. This barrel, I don't know if my camera is gonna catch that. It's a Schumann barrel. All right, this barrel is stamped Schumann. All right, so this gun and this era of Atlas guns was built out of OE parts. All right, so these were the custom guns moving into the semi-custom era. Now, really, when I started with Atlas, they were that semi-custom builder in that they had a worksheet that you would go down and you would check which things you wanted. You know, what caliber, 9mm 40. You know, what kind of slide cuts did you want? What kind of sight did you want? Did you want this? Did you not want that? What kind of magwell? You know, did you want the big hands magwell or not? There was, it was one side of one sheet of paper. There was, let's say, 12 options of how their pistol would come. It was semi-custom at the time, but again, there's kind of a box you had to work in and still be at 2011. So by and large, most of the Atlas pistols that are out there today are semi-custom. They come from a curated list of options. This was a custom gun in that I had an idea, and this is in one of the other videos I referenced my joke of every time I tried to buy a single stack gun from Atlas, they told me no. One of those times, we decided to do this project instead. All right, so this concept of a gun, I don't even know how many of these he made before he made the jump to the model, but the concept of this gun became the Erebus. All right, the Erebus is a more refined version than what we'll call the Maximus. All right, so this is what became the model. They refined the comp a little bit, like the actual size, shape, design of it. This barrel is not a Schumann barrel. All right, so this one is actually, I think this is still an OEM barrel, but they weren't stamping them at the time, so this was a move towards an Atlas barrel or Atlas part. But Atlas saw the future when they were doing guns like this. They were limited, their lead time was limited by what their OEMs could deliver. All right, so he had the same dream that Wilson had. All right, I even heard him say it a few times. He wanted to be the Wilson Combat of wide body pistols. All right, he wanted to have all his own parts to build his guns with. All right, that is what this is. And I would argue I have Atlas guns from almost every era of their existence. This gun, this production gun, is every bit of quality and probably better than those initial guns. All right, because they are made out of their own parts, and so the parts are made to their standard, and then they are vertically integrated all the way from bar stock to delivery to customer. They can build what they want. So if custom is the barometer for quality, I don't think that means what you think it means. And just because they'll build it, because they'll let you go through the experience of checking all the boxes, I don't think that yields you a better gun. And in fact, having walked a lot of people through the forest on that, a lot of people who order those guns, they just kind of order what they think is cool. It doesn't necessarily manifest itself in a gun that shoots well. One of the things that Atlas has always done that has really kept me around with them for a long time is they build guns towards a purpose, and really the only feature sets they offer have a performance effect or a performance advantage, specifically in the competition sports. This gun was purpose built to be a 3-gun open pistol. All right, open minor, does not shoot major. All right, open minor, that's this gun. All right, limited guns. All right, that's where the 9mm guns became the 4.6 guns. You notice they don't make a 40 in the 4.6. All right, and then the limited gun that they wanted to make is a 5.4, the Nemesis. Just for brevity's sake, I didn't roll all those guns out here on my bench, and you've seen some of them before. But just because they're standardized in models and they don't give you the illusion of being custom does not equal quality. All right, so when we talk about what is a custom gun is what it's always been. You send it to a gunsmith and they give you what they give you. Some of what happened with this gun, and this is representative of other custom pistols experiences that I've had, you give them an idea of what you want, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you'll get the gun I give you, you'll get the gun I build you. All right, when you start to get too into the sauce with gunsmiths, like the actual gunsmiths, not the customer facing gunsmiths, the actual gunsmiths, they're kind of, eventually they might indulge you for a little bit, but eventually get to the point of, you'll get the gun I build you. Like I know what you want. I think I have a concept for what you want, and I'm going to build it. And then sometimes it turns out pretty sweet. If it turns out sweet enough times, eventually it gets standardized into a model so that it is much easier for you to get. So This pistol, while it's built from a drop-down menu when you order it, is a world-class pistol, all right? You cannot find a better fit and a better performing wide-body 1911 pistol than an Atlas. It has its peers. It has its contemporaries. I would say you'd be hard-pressed to exceed what Atlas can deliver for you in a pistol. But when we talk about custom guns, that's what custom means to me. Hopefully that gave you some insight on all that stuff. If you have any questions on this, you want me to get into it more, we'll go for it, go around another 40 minutes. Drop it down below. Always love to see your comments, except the safety Nazis. Don't much care what you have to say. But thank you for your service. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the range soon.